Hello and welcome to another podcast episode. Do you know, I reckon the summer has just started. We've had a couple of days of really nice weather. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm looking to the north over the South Downs. It's blue sky, sunshine. The flag is barely moving. It's warm out there. 16 degrees centigrade, which is 60 Fahrenheit. 88% humidity. 10-18 millibars on the barometer. We really have had a lovely couple of days. I hope I haven't spoken too soon. We now have a month of rain. But autumn, the fall, as you call it in America, can be a lovely time of year. I think the fall is a nice word to describe that season because presumably it's named after the leaves falling from the trees. I don't know that, but that would make sense, wouldn't it? Oh, there's a chap over the road climbing a ladder. I do not like heights. He's just climbed up this ladder. He's now standing on a platform with no rail round it at all. He must be 20 feet up in the air. I just couldn't do that. I would freeze. Talking of freezing, we've got the winter coming. Amy, hello to you. We were talking about the weather, weren't we? The seasons. The winters in the UK seem to be so long. It's kind of 9 months of winter and then 3 months of summer. Well, of summer if you're really lucky. May can be very nice. June is normally just a month of rain. Come July, people are thinking, is the summer here yet? Is this the summer? Suddenly it's August, and then people are thinking, hang on a minute, we're running out of time for summer. So it really is nice to have this blue sky. I don't like that chap over there. I mustn't look. We went to Arundel Castle recently. We've been there a few times. And looking out over the top of the castle, I can't do it. I just have to keep well away from the edges of the castle. It's quite safe. You can't fall over the wall. It's a high wall, but you are able to lean and look over. And that's what I can't do. Even if I see something on television where someone's up the top of a tower or something, my stomach churns. I have to look away from the screen. My stomach starts churning. Oh, no, I can't watch this. It's strange, but it's a kind of, is it a phobia, I suppose? Trisha's uncle, who passed away some time ago, he was terrified of spiders. What is it, arachnophobia? I don't know what it's called. Absolutely terrified of spiders. He was a big chap, a big burly chap. You wouldn't think he was afraid of anything. Show him a spider and he ran a mile. It's funny, isn't it? He always knew that spiders couldn't hurt him. It was just some fear, phobia or whatever. But there we are. We're all different, which is just as well. Thank you for all your messages and emails. Lovely to hear from you all. I've been a little bit late. Did you hear that beeping? That's my phone. It's an alarm call. I phone my mother a couple of times a week at the same time, and I forget what the time is, especially when I'm enjoying chatting away to you. I forget what the time is. Last week she phoned me and she said, oh, is your phone all right? I was expecting a call half an hour ago. And when people get old, they do like to have things on time, don't they? They want to be precise with everything. I have to phone her at the certain time, and if I don't, then she worries. So that's what that was. That's my alarm, which goes twice a week at the same time. Really useful, actually, really useful. Yes, I've been a little bit late answering some of the emails. I've been out in the garden enjoying this weather. This is the thing in this country. You have to make the most of the sun because it's quite a rare thing to see in the sky, that big round yellow thing. There's normally clouds, rain. In the winter it's dark and the sun is so low down on the horizon you can barely see it. So I've been making the most of the nice weather. I've done a lot in the garden, a lot of pruning and cutting back of things. Ready for, it's the winter again. I nearly said ready for the winter. I've got to say that. We're not into autumn yet, are we? It starts Sunday. When you'll be listening to this, it starts on Sunday. That's the 1st of September. In the spring, or when the spring is just about to spring, most people you speak to will say, the daffodils are coming up. Have you seen the daffodils and the crocus? Spring's here, it's almost here. And I think it's the build-up with people saying, will it be a good summer? I hope it's a good summer this year. There's so much talk about it. I think it must only be in Britain because our weather is so changeable. I think it's only here that people are so excited about the spring. It's here at last, the spring. The sun's a little bit higher in the sky. Have you noticed the evenings are a little bit lighter? The mornings are getting a bit lighter. There's this huge amount of talk about it and this looking forward to summer. And of course, when summer gets here or almost gets here, or we don't really have much of a summer, then it's a huge letdown. It's like a massive anticlimax. I think us Brits would be better off actually not talking about the weather, not discussing it. Wait, that's exactly what I'm doing now, isn't it? Oh dear. I've often wondered what it must be like to live down on or near the equator, where the sun is sort of midday all the time. It's the middle of the sky, isn't it? It's right above you. Is it right above you all the time? Yes, it is, isn't it? More or less. But imagine living up the top of Norway, somewhere near the Arctic Circle. In fact, the North Pole, what do they get? They get 6 months of day and then 6 months of night. When I went to Helsinki many years ago, we went there. That was quite amazing. 3 o'clock in the morning, it's daylight. In fact, all night it was, I forget what time of year it was, it must have been summer. All night, it was not daylight, but it wasn't dark. It was light. Not proper daylight, of course. That was Helsinki. So going further north, obviously as you get closer to the North Pole, it's going to be daylight all the time for 6 months, isn't it? And then it's night time for 6 months. Imagine that. No, don't imagine that. 6 months of dark struth. I remember the first time I went to Spain on holiday in the 60s. No, early 70s, I lied. Whenever it was. One thing I noticed, apart from the lovely weather, on the roofs, the flat roofs of the houses, they had like a water tank and then pipes going up and down, obviously to heat the water. The sun shines, really hot sunshine, on the pipes and the tank, and they've got free hot water. Fantastic. And another thing I noticed, domestic appliances such as washing machines were outside, not cluttering up the kitchen in the house. They were outside, under a roof, of course, like our patio. There's no actual rain that gets on the washing machine. If we put it there, out there, it wouldn't get wet because it's under the patio roof. And that's what they did in Spain. Because the air is dry, isn't it? You couldn't do that here because the air, well, especially in the winter, it's just so damp. Everywhere is so damp. The washing machine would rust away. It wouldn't survive the first winter. But that really struck home when I saw washing machines and also fridges outside. They must have got pretty hot. They must have had to work overtime to keep themselves cool, the food inside and the drinks. But fridges, washing machines, outside on the patio or out the back somewhere under a little roof. It's such a different way of life, isn't it? Somewhere down the Mediterranean countries where the sun shines 100 times more than it does here, and it's warm and dry all the time. I know they have rain and stuff. They have a lot of electrical storms, don't they? But that always has struck me when I've been to Portugal and Greece, anywhere down there. Cyprus, I've been there. That's lovely. They don't have to have everything inside, cars in garages because they'll rust away. It's just a completely different way of life, isn't it? And all because of the weather. And then other countries, talking of Norway, I know a radio amateur chap, a radio ham. He moved to Norway. He lived in London and he moved to Norway. And I've spoken to him on the radio and he says it's, in the winter, it's snow all the time. He's always digging himself out of his place because of the snow drifts up against his door. Why move there? Norway, I'm not knocking Norway, a lovely country. I've never been there, but from what I've seen on telly, a lovely country. If you like snow. And as for Iceland, stone the crows. Imagine living in Iceland. Well, the name of the country gives it away, really, doesn't it? Iceland. I think their volcano's just taken off again, hasn't it? Just erupted again. That's dreadful. Fantastic to see. The lava spewing out. Oh, amazing to see. Mother Nature letting off steam and a bit more. But of course not very good if you live somewhere near the base of the volcano. I chatted to a chap on the radio the other day and he was in Serbia. Funnily enough, he said to me, "What's the weather like there? I hear your summer isn't too good." And I said, "Well, today we've got lovely sunshine and it's actually hot." I mean, hot here is kind of anything over 20 degrees Celsius is hot. I said, "What's the weather doing where you are down in Serbia?" And he said, "It's raining." He told me his name, Zig, Z-I-G. That obviously stands for something else. It's shortened. I did look him up. You can look up people online, radio hams, and his name was some long name I can't pronounce. Lovely chap, though. We had quite a good talk. And as he said, the rain shouldn't be here in Serbia. It's supposed to be in the UK. And he's right, isn't he? Do you remember last Sunday I was talking about things I don't like? And the list is endless. And as Tricia said, it would be a lot quicker if you were to make a list of things you do like, that would take about 30 seconds, whereas the things I don't like would take me hours, tens of hours, years to list. Well, I've heard from quite a few of you about, I'm not going to read all the emails out, but quite a few of you about the things you don't like. Rex, hello. Rex says, I don't like anything. He says, I can't think of one thing I like. Well, that's a pretty poor state of affairs, Rex. Don't you like the summer? Let me list the things I do like. The summer, beer, 1960s girls in miniskirts. Oh no, I'm going off piste again, aren't I? Stop it. No, we must behave ourselves. Rex doesn't like anything. Well, that's not good, Rex. I mean, what's wrong with you? You need therapy, man. What's the matter with you? I've just made a few notes here. Joan doesn't like the government. Well, no one likes the government, Joan. I think that's on everyone's list, whichever government it is. Henry, nice to hear from you, Henry. Henry doesn't like cars. He wishes we could go back to horse and carts. You might have something there, Henry. Horses and cart, yeah, nothing wrong with that. The horse eats hay, doesn't he? Horses are non-polluting. That would be rather nice. What a lovely, slow sort of pace of life, wouldn't it be? Just to hear the horses going past at a nice slow pace, no one in a hurry, people popping out into the street, as I remember my grandfather doing, collecting horse manure for his roses. He'd go out there with a bucket and spade. I'd go with him. What are you doing, Grandad? I'm just collecting this lot. It's still steaming. No, I shouldn't say that. And he puts it on his roses. Apparently it was good for roses. I don't know. Hello, David. You say you don't like the television because all the programmes are rubbish. The news is depressing. You're right. I don't know why I'm laughing. You are right, David. He wants to go back to the days of radio only, when we had a wireless, he says. You must be around about my age, David. I remember when we called them a wireless back in the 50s. Turn the wireless on. Let's listen to Housewife's Choice. Music while you work. Do you remember that in the mornings? Music while you work. That was good. Mrs. Dale's Diary. The Archers. I'm off on one. You set me off on one, David. I know what you mean, though. TV, most of it is repeats, and it's rubbish, and it costs a fortune. Subscriptions and the BBC licence fee rip-off we have here. Yes, I do agree, David. We could probably do without televisions, couldn't we? It would get people out a bit more as well. Out in the sunshine, if you've got any sunshine, which we still have at the moment. Jerry says he hates cigarette smoke. Yes, I know. I smoked for many years, Jerry, and I didn't obviously notice the effect of the stench of the house and everything when I smoked. But now I haven't smoked now for ages. And when I go into a room where someone is smoking, it does stink, I must admit. But have you heard the latest, though, Jerry? I think it was only announced, was it yesterday or today? Our new government, I think that's what they call themselves, a government, they are going to, or they're thinking of banning, you can't smoke in pubs. So what people do is go into the pub garden or a little shelter outside where they can have their cigarettes. Well, they're now thinking of banning smoking outside the pub, in the pub garden, or in these little designated smoking areas. They're going to ban that. And also events such as a football match, all the people queuing outside to go into the stadium, they're going to ban smoking there. I can see the argument, smoking is bad for people, and as you say, Jerry, you don't like the smell of it. I don't. But some people are saying, well, hang on, this is a nanny state. You can't do this, you can't do that. It's getting a bit silly. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Do you want to email me on that one? Probably not. rants@protonmail.com. I have had quite a few emails about things that people don't like. Helen, you've written me a book almost. You've written, 115 things you don't like. You've listed them all out. Fantastic reading all that. And I think, Helen, I agree with most of what you said there. You don't like crowds of people. You don't like going to the beach because wherever you sit, you find a little spot on your own. People will come and sit right next to you, which is true. So you don't like the beach. I don't like the beach. I've never liked the beach. You don't like cats, Helen. I'm just looking at your list now. You don't like cats because they poo in your garden. Oh, I see. The next door neighbour's cat poos in your garden. That's a problem. I like cats. We've had cats. We've had 2 or 3 over the decades. They're okay, but they are, well, yes, they have to go somewhere, don't they? But it does seem that cats won't poo in their own garden. They go in someone else's to do it. Simon, nice to hear from you. Simon's just written one thing. He says, I don't like people. That's my list, Simon. That's on my list. That's at the top of my list. I don't like people. You don't say why you don't like people, Simon. Anyway, thank you for your contribution. Colin doesn't like holiday makers. The reason being, they visit his village where he lives down in Devon on the seafront. They visit his village, swarm all over the place when the sun's out, wreck the place and then go home. I think they do spend money though, don't they, Colin? Local businesses, you get holiday makers from all over the UK, all flocking into your little village, spending all their money. So it must be good for local shops and pubs. Do you have a pub? Mind you, a village, you haven't said which village, is lovely down in Devon. Do you have a pub, a post office, and all the things I was talking about the other day in little villages? They've all disappeared. A red phone box. Do you have a red phone box? Probably not. Do you have a bus service? Do you have a little general store? Or has the whole lot gone? It's not funny. It's a shame. It's a shame, especially the pub. I know I keep on about pubs, but they are the kind of centre of the community, aren't they? That's where people gather. That's where they meet and have a chat. Anyway, nice to hear from you, Colin. Thank you for that. I should do one more. Right, here's I've printed these out. I have to print stuff out because otherwise I forget what I'm talking about. You probably forget what I'm talking about the minute I've talked about it. One more from Peter. Peter doesn't like the sun. This is interesting because he's very, very pale-skinned, and he said if he goes out into the sun just for 15 minutes, if he's walking on the road, he gets sunburnt. He has to cover up in the summer. He says, this is why I prefer the winter. Yes, I know people like that, Colin. I've known people like that. They can't go out in the sun. I knew a girl like that back in the 70s. When I first met her, it was a friend's girlfriend. When I first met her, I asked her why she was covered up because it was a hot day, a really hot day. And she said, I daren't get the sun on my skin at all. She had her face obviously open, but she had to cover her arms, her legs, everything. And she loved the winter because the sun, if it is out, it's so low on the horizon, it doesn't do anything. Thank you, everyone. There are lots more, but I'm not going to read them all out because we'll be here all day. I suppose that's another example of how different people are affected by the weather in different ways and in different parts of the world. I know a lot of people have said they love the 4 seasons here in Britain. The autumn, you're heading to the winter, where you've got the ice and the cold. Then the spring, you look forward to summer. People do like the 4 seasons, but they are kind of mingling into one, I don't know, what would you call it? We still have hot in the summer and cold in the winter, of course. But sometimes I wonder whether autumn to winter has kind of merged, it's mingled, and then winter to spring. It all takes so long to happen. I know spring doesn't suddenly arrive one morning. That's it, winter's over, spring is here. It does take time, obviously. But it does seem that it's all merging into one more or less, well, not more or less the same. You know what I mean. I'm rambling now. You know what I mean, don't you? I'm going to have a break now. The garden is looking rather nice. I shall go out there, sit on the patio and have a cup of coffee, which will be rather nice. See you in a minute. Well, I don't know about in a minute. It's now 24 hours later. Ian, nice to hear from you. He says, can you read out this email? Well, hang on. It's about Sasquatch and Bigfoot. Hang on, let me just have a look at your email. It's a good job that you don't live in North America, as you'd be abducted by Bigfoot, Sasquatch, if you went into the woods. Well, there you go, Ian. I've read that out for you. That sounds to me like good advice. Don't want to be chased around by Bigfoot, do we? Just going back to this smoking ban they're thinking of bringing in. At the moment, you can't smoke in pubs and bars. That's fair enough. That's fine. What they're saying is you can't smoke out in the beer garden. That's what we call the garden behind the pub in this country, the beer garden. Good enough name, isn't it? But you can't smoke out there. Now, they do have designated smoking areas. They look like little bus shelters. You can go and gather out there, all the smokers, and puff away on your cigarette and have a good old chat. Well, they're thinking of banning that and the garden. Now, take our club, for example, up the road. People step outside the doors and there's a little strip of paved area, like a little patio. That's where they stand and have their cigarettes. If they're banned from doing that, all they've got to do is walk through the gate onto the pavement, the sidewalk, which is literally just over the wall, and have the cigarette on the pavement. So it doesn't really do anything, does it? You can't stand that side of the wall to have your cigarette, but if you go through the gate, you can stand that side of the wall because you're on the pavement. So I don't know how that's going to work, but here's the thing. This is the thing. Butlins, you know my favourite word, Butlins? Lots of people smoke at Butlins. Now, it's all within one kind of huge venue, if you like. They've got outside activities, there's indoor stuff. You're not allowed to smoke indoors, but you can go out to the designated smoking area, or anywhere in fact. They do have little places where you can sit to have your cigarette. There's ashtrays there and stuff. So what will happen there, somewhere like Butlins, because so many people there smoke, they really do, so many of them smoke. I don't know why it should be Butlins where everyone smokes. So what are they going to do? You can't smoke in the designated smoking area. What about the rest of the grounds, within the grounds of Butlins? Does that mean that you can't smoke anywhere within the grounds? Because you could say it's one big beer garden. They have pubs and things there. They have tables outside the pubs where people sit and smoke, because you can't do it in the pub. So what's going to happen? Will smoking be banned from the entire Butlins grounds, all within the perimeter fence? You'd have to go out of Butlins altogether to smoke. Or what are they going to do? I don't know. It's all rather odd, isn't it? There's lots of discussion on the TV and radio about it. It seems that the government really do want to bring this in, but I can see lots of problems. And also, who's going to police it? If someone's in Butlins or even in a pub garden, sitting down the end somewhere, minding their own business on their own, miles away from anyone else, having their cigarette, what will someone do in the garden? Will they call the police? If they tell the landlord will say, look, you're not allowed to smoke here. What's he going to do? Enforce it? Ban the chap from the pub? I don't know. Talking of banning people from pubs, I was banned once, years ago. I don't know what I'd done. I was with a friend of mine and we walked in there and this chap came up and he said, no, not tonight, lads. We're looking at each other. We'd not been to this pub before. It was one in town that we'd not been in at all. We looked at each other and looked at him. We were smartly dressed. We were, early 20s? We hadn't got into the pub shouting or misbehaving. And he just said, not tonight, lads, that's it. So we got thrown out of the pub. That's the first time and the only time I've been thrown out of a pub. And all I did was walk in there. Someone on one of these discussion programmes on the news the other day, someone said, you walk along any street in London, you can smell cannabis. People are openly smoking cannabis in the street. Well, that's illegal, isn't it? We're not allowed to smoke cannabis in this country. It's illegal. But obviously no one's policing it. You don't see police stopping people. What are you smoking? Well, I've got to check your cigarette. They don't do that. It's very, very difficult, isn't it? It's all right bringing in these bans and laws and things, but how do you police it? Look at prohibition in America. Was it 1926? Where was prohibition? You're not allowed to drink alcohol, that's it. No one's allowed to drink, buy, sell alcohol or whatever. So what happened? The whole thing went underground. There's moonshine splashing around everywhere. There's bottles of this and barrels of that being produced all over the place. Black market was thriving. Well, that's what's going to happen here. Imagine if they banned cigarettes entirely, so they're not allowed to be manufactured here, smoked here, imported. They're all going to be smuggled in and people that smoke will still smoke. Apparently the idea is to put less pressure on the NHS. Apparently 80,000 people a year die from smoking-related diseases, problems, whatever. And it puts a lot on the NHS. There's so many sides, aren't there, to arguments. The other side to the argument is the amount of tax the government make out of smoking, people buying cigarettes. It is billions. What are they going to do without that? When I was a boy, do you remember sweet cigarettes? We used to go and buy packets of sweet cigarettes and walk along the street, puffing them as if we're smoking. They were, what were they, like white? I don't know what they're made out of. Sugar, I expect. Nothing but sugar. And then we'd chew them, then get another one out of the packet. Even the little packet was like a cigarette packet. And I remember going into places like an off-licence. In the window, they had packets of dummy cigarettes, all on display. And what we used to do was go in there and say, have you got any spare dummy cigarette packet? And the chap would say, oh, hang on a minute. And he'd rummage around beneath the counter, then chuck us a couple of packets. And they had cigarettes in, but they weren't real. So, we'd walk along with these cigarettes. And we were, 8, 9, 10 years old? No one told us off. No one said, oh, you don't want to get into that. You don't want to start smoking. This is the first step. No one did that. Of course, back then, everyone smoked, just about everyone. I smoked for a long time. I think I've mentioned this before. I smoked for decades. Luckily, I got away with it. I'm okay. I survived the cigarettes. Probably cost me tens of thousands of pounds over the decades. Imagine if I'd saved all that up. But it's very difficult to give up. It's no good saying to people, right, you're not smoking in the pub garden anymore, because smoking kills and smoking will send you into hospital. It's all right saying that. What they need to do is come up with a way to get people off cigarettes. I don't mean vape either, the vaping things. They've got to stop people from smoking, make them give up. I reckon, when I smoked, I reckon most of these smokers I knew, if there was a magic pill, they would have taken it to stop smoking. Yes, it was enjoyable in a way, but I think the majority of the smokers I knew would have said, yeah, give me the tablet, whatever it is, give me the tablet. I'm fed up with the cigarettes. Before you go out, have I got enough cigarettes? Have I got my lighter with me? You've got to check everything wherever you go. I'm running out of cigarettes. We're out in the country. There's no shop. What am I going to do? I've got 2 cigarettes left. That is the addiction. It was a worry. Basically, cigarettes rule your life. I knew a chap, we'd driven out into the country. I forget what it was, not military vehicle, some radio fair or something. We'd driven out miles into the country to this place, and he had forgotten his cigarettes. I smoked at the time, so I gave him half the cigarettes I had, but he smoked like a chimney. They were gone within an hour or so, and then he was desperate for a cigarette. He was awful the way he smoked, one after, honestly, chain smoking. And for the rest of the day, he couldn't get a cigarette anywhere. No one sold cigarettes in this outside event in the country, and he was in a foul mood. We'd both gone in his car. He said he'd drive, which was fine, but of course then he wanted to leave. I had to leave with him. So we left, I don't know, lunchtime. The show went on till the evening. We had to leave. He got his cigarettes on the way home. We didn't go back to the show after that because the car park was full. We wouldn't have got back in. It was really jam-packed. So that was the end of that, all because he didn't have any cigarettes with him. We both had to go home early, which was a shame. But it just showed me at the time, I remember thinking, it showed me how cigarettes ruled my life and his. Wherever I went, I always checked, I've got cigarettes, I've got my lighter. If it was a gas lighter, was it full? Petrol lighter, have I got enough petrol? Am I going to run out? Dreadful situation. I think I've told you before, a couple of the teachers at school would smoke in class. They're sitting at their desk up the top there by the blackboard, they're looking at us, having a cigarette. And the art master, he'd sit there having his cigarette in the early 60s, listening to the pirate radio stations on his transistor radio. He wasn't bothered about us lot. Okay, do a drawing of, a drawing of so-and-so. So we all get on drawing so-and-so, whatever it was. He's sitting there listening to the pirate radio station, smoking. He didn't really teach us anything about art. I don't know, looking back, it's all rather strange, isn't it? Our science master, he was weird. The geography, there were 2 geography teachers. One of them would sit there, he had this big moustache, which was all nicotine covered. He'd sit there smoking, and he'd wiggle his lips with his fingers. He'd be going throughout the whole lesson, sitting there, leaning on his desk with one elbow, doing this, I don't know, perhaps he needed therapy. There was a technical drawing master, teacher, whatever he was awful. I think I've told you this before. I was drawing a line with a ruler. You meant to use the T-square thing on the drawing board, that sort of 45-degree angle. You meant to slide that up and down. I was using a ruler. I thought I was quicker. And he hit me round the head with something. I don't know what it was. "Idiot boy," he said. "Idiot boy." Of course, everyone's sniggering and laughing. I don't think we learned anything about technical drawing, art, geography. I did learn a bit about geography. I did like geography. English and science were my favourite lessons. I did like English and science. The English teacher, she was okay, but she stank of cigarettes. Her breath reeked of stale smoke. Oh, it was awful when she got very near. Now, let me see, what have you written? Let me just check your punctuation. And she's right by your head, and it stinks. Her breath stinks. And the science master, I can't tell you about him. He should have been put in prison, actually. He was a bit weird. He liked boys. He liked us boys. Say no more about that. Stone the crows. No wonder I hated school. I remember one of the lads at school, he smoked. We were 14. Yeah, we must have been no more than 14 because that's when I left school. He smoked and he said he had his parents' consent. And I remember 1 or 2 of the lads saying that. I think you couldn't smoke or buy cigarettes until you were 16. Mind you, the shops would sell you cigarettes when you're 10 years old. I used to go around the sweet shop and buy cigarettes for my dad when I was 10, probably even 8. I walked round a few blocks to the sweet shop and buy him some fags. No one ever said, are you 16? 8-year-old boy, are you 16? Oh, yeah, I'm 16. But there was this parents' consent thing. I'm not sure whether it was true or whether the kids made it up, but apparently if you had your parents' consent, you could smoke from the age of 14. Mind you, everyone smoked from the age of 12, so I don't know what difference all these rules and regulations made. None at all, I suppose. At what age did you first go into a pub and buy a drink, an alcoholic type drink? There we are, there's one for you. Raise Rants at protonmail.com. Now in America, when I went to Los Angeles, we went there years ago, the age was 21. And we had to show our passports. Had to get the passports out. Look, there's my date of birth on the passport. 21. Of course, here it's 18. You can go in and buy a drink. So I didn't know that when we both went over there. I didn't know that till we went into this bar and the bloke said, well, you don't look 21. I was 24 at the time. No, 23. I can't remember our ages. So wherever we went, we had to take our passports with us. But here, I think they were pretty strict in America. But here in Britain, we were going into the pub at 15. I mean, we didn't look 18, 15-year-old kids, basically, going into the pub. Oh, can I have a pint of bitter, please? And they'd just serve you. I don't think they cared. I don't suppose every pub was like that. Do you remember Black and Tan? A Black and Tan, it was, what was it? It was half a pint of bitter and a bottle of, was it brown ale? I can't remember. I didn't like it. I tried Black and Tan. I didn't like that. When I reached the age of 18 and I went into a pub, it was no fun anymore. It was legal. It was no fun. When you're 15, 16, 17, you say to your mates, I got served in the pub. When you're 18, you get served anyway. It's not against the law, so it's no fun. That sounds awful. What am I inciting? I can't incite underage drinking, underage smoking. There's this other thing about smoking they're trying to bring in or thinking of bringing in. On, for example, the 1st of January, whichever year it might be, people under a certain age won't be able to buy cigarettes. It'll be illegal. They'll never be able to buy cigarettes. I'm not sure exactly how it works. So if you're, say, 18, for example, just as a figure, if you're 18 on New Year's Eve, then you can buy cigarettes for the rest of your life. If you're not 18 until the 1st of January, then you are banned from buying cigarettes for life. It's all balmy. People just don't know what's going on. It's very difficult to know what is going on. Another thing, another grey area with us radio amateurs, us hams, you're not allowed to drive your car while using a mobile phone. Fair enough, that causes accidents. What about a microphone? With a coily lead like the cops have, 10-4, a good buddy. You're chatting on the microphone. That isn't a mobile phone and that is legal. Or is it? What's that like where you are in other countries? I know quite a few radio hams, amateurs listen to the podcast, so there we are, you're a licensed ham. What's the situation in America or Australia where you are? Can you chat on a microphone while you're driving along? With a coily lead, chatting away to other radio amateurs, can you do that? Of course, here in Britain we've got laws and bylaws that go back hundreds of years, and some of them are still in force. You will not allow your horse to poo in the pub garden, in the beer garden. No, I made that one up, obviously. But there are bylaws that go back hundreds of years. I think it's time someone went through everything and sorted all this out. You're not allowed to burn witches on the village green before midnight. Burn witches. They did that, didn't they? Do you know people were dreadful? Well, they are now. You go back in history looking at the things that people did to each other. Honestly, it was awful. Talking of cannabis, as I was, my son the other day, we were having a chat, and he said that things like cannabis plants and other magic mushroom stuff have been around for thousands of years. And people, you see pictures, don't you, of kind of tribes that live in the jungle. They're taking all these weird plants and getting psychedelic highs on them and stuff. And as he was pointing out, they've been around for thousands of years. Another interesting point is if someone just this week discovered beer, for example, wine, whiskey, vodka, gin, alcohol, and they said, this is great stuff, look what it blows your head off, it's brilliant, you stagger about, you haven't got a care in the world, you get drunk, it's fantastic. Let's open up places, we call them pubs, where we sell this drug to people and they could all go and crash their cars afterwards and get into fights and stuff. It would be banned, wouldn't it? It would be banned straight away. Alcohol, this new wonder drug, is banned throughout the entire world. But they were drinking wine, weren't they? Back 2,000, well, more than 2,000 years ago. People were drinking wine, growing their grapes, stamping on them with their feet and sticking them into bottles and whatever, drinking all this wine and having a fantastic time. Was it Bob Newhart, the American? It rings a bell. I had this record where he's talking about Sir Walter Raleigh, was it, bringing cigarettes over? And he said, so what do you do, Walt? You stick this thing in your mouth? And this chap said, yeah. And what do you do then? You set fire to it. And it went on like this. Have you heard that? And there was another one, wasn't there? The driving test. You were distracted by the red flashing light behind you. And he drove on a woman's lawn, didn't he, the chap? And this, I don't know, I can't remember. Do you remember, though, Bob Newhart? I had this record with the cigarette one in particular that I liked. I just found Bob Newhart on YouTube. He's on the phone to Sir Walter Raleigh saying, what have you got for us this time? Tobacco. What's tobacco then, Walt? You roll it up. It's a leaf, or is it? You roll it up in a bit of paper. Anyway, it goes on. You know the one. Fantastic. Yeah, I like that. Now, this episode's supposed to be all about the weather. Goodness knows why, the weather. But anyway, it is. I was watching telly and this news programme, and this chap in Skegness, that's the east coast of the UK, I think it's just up above Norfolk, he does donkey rides on the beach, as his dad did and as his grandfather did many decades ago. And he was saying business is very bad at the moment. People just don't have the money. The weather's been awful. Seaside resorts, of course, have been hit by not only the weather, car parking, for example. He said in the old days you could just drive down to the beach, park somewhere and off you go. Now there's charges for parking. People have to pay a lot of money to park somewhere, so they tend to avoid the beach, or that part of the beach anyway. And fish and chip shops are finding it difficult because of the cost of living crisis and all this going on. People just don't want to spend their money. You don't want to drive to the beach, have to pay for the car park, have to pay a lot of money for fish and chips, ice creams, lollies. They used to be cheap, didn't they? These days, you go for an ice cream or something and it's, I don't know how much it is, but it's like £2, £3. That's a lot of money, isn't it? You just pop down to the beach for a day out and people aren't bothering. That's what he was saying. And he's finding it very difficult with his donkey rides to make a living out of it anymore. And this is how the weather, apart from the cost of living and all that, this is how the weather affects businesses, seaside town. I mean, where I live, it's a seaside town. It's a sort of holiday resort here. A lot of people in the summer, they drive down from London, park all along the seafront here and enjoy a day at the beach, because up in London, they don't see much of the beach. And it's only a 50-mile ride from London down to here. Doesn't take too long. They chuck all the family in the car, picnic hamper and all the stuff, and motor off down to the beach on the West Sussex coast. Lovely. But now, of course, it's all so expensive. You can't do that. There's nowhere to park. Ice creams cost a lot. Fish and chips cost a fortune. We don't do donkey rides here, but it's just all hopeless now. People go abroad. I know this started back in the 70s, people going off to Spain. I did. I went there in 71, 72. My first holiday abroad was down to, where did we go? Palma, I think. Yeah, Palma, Mallorca. Or Majorca, as some people say. Majorca. I went to Majorca, innit? Or what? So the weather affects businesses, apart from people's holidays. You go on holiday to a resort somewhere in the UK. It could rain for the week or the 2 weeks that you're there, rain every day. Or it could be lovely sunshine. So it all depends. If it's pouring with rain, it's a bank holiday weekend. Let's take the family out somewhere. Pouring with rain, we won't bother. We'll leave it. A lot of traffic on the roads. Pouring with rain, let's forget it. So that family may have gone to a resort somewhere, a seaside place. They might have spent, 30, 40 quid. Perhaps going out for a meal and all these more than 40 quid these days. Struth. Stone the rooks. And they just don't bother. So if a lot of families do that, then the businesses, they're just losing money, aren't they? Hand over fist. I wonder where that saying came from. What's that mean? Hand over fist. I'm just doing it. My hand is over my fist. I've no idea what that means. I'm sure someone will tell me. Ray's Rants at protonmail.com. Don't forget to look at the website. I still haven't put any photos on, raysrants.info. I haven't put any more photos on. As I've said before, I don't want to put photos on just for the sake of it. Thinking about it, there are a lot of businesses. We had a lot of fishermen down here in the old days. All the fishing boats were on the beach and they'd set out every day. We still do have quite a few fishermen that go out, but of course that depends on the weather. If it's a rough sea and the weather's awful, they're just not going to go out. They used to sell fresh fish down on the seafront there, and they did a good business. They do a day or a night's fishing, set up their bits and pieces on the beach, people walking along the promenade, they'd sell all their fish, which was great. They'd supply local restaurants and cafes and things, I suppose, local fish and chip shops, I don't know. I don't go to the beach anymore, so I don't know whether they still sell fish down there. There must be some fishermen. Maybe not. I should have to find out. I think there's a webcam down the seafront looking at the pier or something. I might have to find that later and see whether there are any fishermen down there selling their wares. One chap on the programme, he was a fish and chip man, and I think he was it the Fish and Chip Shop Association? He wasn't that, but whatever. And the interviewer said to him, fish and chips used to be a cheap meal. You could pop into the local fish and chip shop and buy cod and chips, and it was a good, cheap, healthy meal. The fish and chip man said, well, it still is. It's not expensive if you compare with other things, restaurants and that. But it does seem expensive. Put it that way, you go in for cod and chips. I don't know what you pay. But obviously in the old days, when I was a boy, you could get fish and chips for kind of 1 and 6pence halfpenny and 3 farthings or whatever. These days, you need a £10 note. If you're going to buy cod and chips, you need a £10 note. So it's not a cheap meal anymore. He was saying it is. I don't know, compared, I suppose, with restaurants and the rest of it, perhaps it is cheap. Fish and chip shops, of course, these days have got so much competition, not from other fish and chip shops, but burger places, kebab type places. There's all these fast food places opened up everywhere. Whereas in the old days, you wanted some sort of takeaway meal. Well, there was only the fish and chip shop. There was nothing else. You couldn't go and buy burger and chips somewhere. You couldn't go and buy kebab stuff and all that. They've got so much competition now. Fast food outlets. That's obviously making it very difficult for them as well. And a lot of them now have to deliver. I suppose that costs them. Well, they probably pass that on to the customer. You can phone your chip shop and say, I want this, and that, and they bring it round. A lad on a motorbike or someone in a car will bring it round. Chinese restaurants do go back a long way. Were they around in the 70s? Oh, dear, my memory's awful. Yes, there were Chinese places in the 70s, but they weren't so much known as the takeaway business. It was more Chinese restaurants. They don't rely on the weather, of course. If you want fish and chips, you can do that in the winter or the summer. I don't eat fish. I don't like it. I used to like fish, but I heard this Tricia hates it when I tell people this dreadful story I heard on the news years ago. North Sea cod has cancerous growths on it. I heard this on the news, on the telly, and I thought, what's this? I like cod and chips. Cancerous growths on cod from the North Sea. That was the end of that. I didn't eat fish anymore. I don't like the sound of that. It's enough to put anyone off. When I tell people, if we're out with the family for whatever, fish and chips or whatever meal, I say, are there any cancerous growths on your fish? Of course, people don't like it. Tricia tells me off. Happy days. And talking of the weather, where are we now? It's Saturday. Saturday, 10:30 in the morning. It's raining. We've had a bit of rain in the night. It's raining again now. September tomorrow, isn't it? What's the date today? I don't know. 30th. No, 31st today. September tomorrow when you'll be listening to this. September, weather-wise, can be a very nice month. We have the so-called Indian summer. Why is it called an Indian summer? Does anyone know that? Let me know. And even October can be nice. I know the sun is getting low on the horizon each day, a bit lower, but it can be nice, October. I hope you're all having a good weekend wherever you are. Mark over there in Dublin. How are you doing, Mark? You all right? Amy in Seattle. We got 2 or 3 Susans, America, Germany, all over the place. Loads of Susans. Oh, that's something I've been wondering about. You know the lazy Susan? And I don't mean your lazy Susan. There's a thing on the table that spins round. They call it a lazy Susan. Does anyone know why? I must look that up. I've got so many things to look up. Hang on, what's this on my watch here? My watch says Met Office. Yellow warning. Struth. I don't believe this. A small chance of flooding and disruption from heavy showers and thunderstorms on Sunday. Talk about a good old British summer. Heavy rain, thunderstorms, flooding. Goodness me, whatever next. They call these things weather events now, don't they? In the old days, it was a weather forecast. It's going to rain. There might be thunder. Now it's a weather event. I don't know why. Why do people have to change the English language all the time? Who was it? Was it you, Ray, the other day? Emailed me. Or was it Brent? I can't remember. About changing the language, changing words. What annoys me is people's lack of punctuation. Whatever you read online that someone's written in a post or, well, not so much in a post because they tend not to use punctuation. Even articles that have been written online, the punctuation is often abysmal. It's atrocious. Awful, even. What my English teacher would have said, I dread to think. Not that she taught us punctuation. I learnt that myself. If you're writing the word haven't, where does the apostrophe go? I didn't know when I left school. Well, I didn't know anything when I left school. I did know one thing. I knew about radios because I used to study that at home. But punctuation, I didn't understand when I was at school. When you write the word, for example, haven't, the apostrophe goes between the N and the T. Why? Because that's the missing letter, isn't it? Have not. Why didn't they tell us that at school? Perhaps they did. To be fair to the teacher, when she wasn't smoking and eyeing up the art master, I think they had a bit of a thing going. Our English teacher lady and the art master, they're always sneaking off to places, probably to have a cigarette, but around the bike sheds. I wonder what else they had round there. But that's not the point. Perhaps she did teach us punctuation, apostrophes, I don't know. But so many people these days, they'll write, for example, in the 1950s, and they'll put 1950 apostrophe S. That is wrong. It's 1950 S, 1950s. MPs. A load of MPs went to the pub. So they'll put MP apostrophe S. Is wrong. Enough of that. I've bored you enough with the weather. Last thing you want now is an English lesson. We're coming up to 50 minutes. I think probably end it in a second. It's still raining out there. The flag is sort of a little bit of a breeze from the west. We've got nothing planned for Sunday. Nothing planned for this weekend, really. We've been so busy during the week with everything. Hence my delay in replying to your emails. Apologies for that. I normally like to reply as soon as possible, certainly the same day. Some of my replies have been a day or two later. So sorry about that. The reason is I've been busy. Now, as a friend of mine once said, there's no such thing as an excuse. There's a reason. Why are you late? What's your excuse? I haven't got an excuse. I've got a reason. I was late because I got up late because I couldn't be bothered. Take care. Look after yourselves. Email me. Have a look at the website. Stay safe. Be healthy. Be good. And if you're bad, don't get caught. If you're bad, let me know. Raise rants at protonmail.com. Let me know what bad things you've done. Let's make a list of the bad things we've all done. Right, that's it. Behave yourselves. I shall see you on Wednesday with the midweek message. Bye-bye for now.